LEQ. You've seen the difference and it's getting better all the time. There's nothing you and I won't do. And stop the world. I'll stop the world out. LEQ.
Welcome back, young scholars. In this video, we will be discussing one of the two essay types on the AP World History test, and that is the long essay question, also known as the LEQ. And in this edition, we'll be focusing primarily on the comparative essay. The AP test features one long essay question, or LEQ essay. It also features one DBQ, or document-based question essay. There are three LEQ types, generally speaking, based upon the three different historical thinking skills that are tested in AP World History. And that is causation, which focuses on the causes and effects of a historical event or process. A comparative essay, which focuses on the similarities and differences between two regions at a particular time. And the CCOT essay, or the continuities and changes over time essay, which focuses on things that are continuing or persisting over time and things that are changing. So you will be given a choice between three prompts on the AP World History test focused on the same theme and skill. So most likely they will be either all three comparative essays, maybe about economics, or maybe there are three CCOT prompts that are related to culture. But each prompt will be from a different time period. So one option will be focused on, for instance, period 1 and 2, maybe. Another option may be focused on period 3, and another option focused on period 4. You'll be given approximately 40 minutes to complete this essay. I say approximately because you're actually given a total of an hour and 40 minutes to complete both the DBQ and LEQ essay, and it's up to you to decide how you want to allocate your time. LEQ is worth 15% of your total score. The reason why we say 40 minutes is the suggested amount of time, because if you do the percentages, then that's about roughly what you should be spending on that section. All essays in the AP test are scored on a rubric. Now, the number of points for these rubrics varies, and so LEQ essays are scored on a 6-point rubric.
My favorite number is 6.
You know, I hate to break this to you, Bert, but 6 isn't anybody's favorite number.
It's my favorite number, Ernie.
It's really important that you understand how each and every one of these points is scored before you take that AP test in May. So the first point is for contextualization. Contextualization describes the broader historical context relevant to the prompt. It basically sets the stage for your essay by explaining to the reader what it is they need to know before they dive into the argument you're about to make. It's found in the first sentences of the introductory paragraph. The second point is for the thesis. The thesis also is included in your introductory paragraph. The thesis responds to the prompt with a historically defensible claim that establishes a line of reasoning. And thesis is usually one of the easier points to score on the LEQ essay. The next 2 points are scored for having evidence in your essay and then using that evidence. There's 1 point for providing specific examples of evidence relevant to the topic. And you can score a 2nd point for supporting an argument using specific and relevant evidence. The first point is just for having it in your essay. The 2nd point is for actually using it in support of your argument. The 5th point is for historical reasoning. So if you use historical reasoning to frame or structure your argument, essentially if you're given an essay that asks you to analyze the similarities between two things, and not only do you argue that these things are similar, you also include in what ways those two things might be different. That's establishing a more nuanced historical argument, which is worth one of these higher level points for historical reasoning. Finally, there is a point for complex understanding. Sometimes we call this the unicorn point because less than 1% usually of students worldwide who take the AP exam actually score it. So it's probably not even worth your time really trying to score it. So you score the unicorn point by using evidence to corroborate, qualify, or modify an argument. We'll talk a little bit about what that means, but we won't spend a lot of time on trying to get this complex understanding point. Learning to write an essay is a little bit like learning the steps of a dance. The very first step when you get the LEQ essay is read the prompt. And it just so happens to be that the first step is probably also the most important step. Let's take a prompt like this, for example. In the period 1200 to 1450 CE, the growth of long-distance transregional trade networks stimulated new exchanges across Afro-Eurasia. Develop an argument that evaluates how the biological, commercial, and/or cultural exchanges across the Silk Road network were similar to the biological, commercial, and/or cultural exchanges across the Indian Ocean trade network in the period 1200 to 1450 CE. So I give prompts like this to my daughter. Now she's only 2, but this is how she responds.
Oh shoot. Oh shoot. Oh shoot. Oh shoot. Oh shoot. Oh shoot. Oh shoot.
Don't be the student who sits there on AP test day just saying, oh shoot, over and over again. You need to have a strategy. You need to start breaking down the prompt. This first sentence is what I like to call the preamble sentence, and it situates you a little bit, gives you a little bit of background context so that you can start to understand better what's being asked of you. And then the real important meat of the question is usually contained in this second sentence. So read the prompt again. You want to circle the important words. So take a look at this and decide for yourself, what do I think is the single most important word in this particular prompt? For me, the most important word in this prompt is the word similar. And the reason is it lets me know what the historical thinking skill the College Board wants me to apply when I'm writing this essay. So here we're talking about a comparison essay because it's asking you to analyze similarities between 2 distinct things. So what 2 things are you being asked to compare? In this case, the long-distance transregional trade networks, the Silk Road, and the Indian Ocean. Now, can you just write any kind of essay whatsoever comparing the Silk Road and the Indian Ocean network? No, they narrow down the focus. They give you a little bit more guideposts in terms of what they want you to talk about, and you're going to score points for, and that's by focusing on the biological, commercial, and/or cultural exchanges that have taken place across those 2 networks, the Silk Road and the Indian Ocean trade network. Can you talk about these similarities over any period of time you want? No, they also narrow your focus by telling you to focus on the period from 1200 to 1450 CE, which is period 1 in our course. So the next step, once you've broken down that prompt, you've identified the critical words, if you've identified it as a comparison essay, either asking you to analyze the similarities between 2 things or maybe the differences between 2 things, the next thing you want to do is to create a Venn diagram and identify as many similarities and differences as you can think of. The Venn diagram might look something like this, a very simple thing on your page with 3 boxes. In the middle, you're identifying things that are true of both the Silk Road and the Indian Ocean sea lanes. Here we have something that's unique to location A, so maybe it's the Silk Road, unique to location B, maybe this is something that's true of the Indian Ocean sea lanes, but not the Silk Road. And so you start to plug in different similarities and differences as you do this brainstorming activity. The next step is to write a thesis using those claims that you've just started to generate. So the thesis must present a historically defensible claim, or another way to think of it is like multiple claims synthesized into a more cohesive claim. So it must establish a clear line of reasoning. It can't be based on things that are historically inaccurate. It should address, ideally, both a similarity and a difference, depending upon what the prompt requires. So notice in this case, they ask you to develop an argument about similarities. However, you're not limited to just talking about things that are similar. And in fact, if you want to try and score some of those more complex historical analysis points, you should try and structure your essay both around similarities and differences. Your thesis must consist of 1 or more sentences. I'm going to teach you a strategy to write a thesis in 2 sentences typically, but it needs to be located in the introduction in that first paragraph, or you can have a thesis in a specified conclusion. If at the end of your essay you are unhappy with what you wrote in your introductory paragraph for your thesis, you might say something like "in conclusion" and then take a stab at rewriting your thesis. If possible, your thesis should follow a rule of 3. It's always good in argumentative writing to use this rule of 3. You're going to start by basing your thesis around keywords from the prompt. You can't just rewrite what the prompt says and say something like, both the Silk Road and Indian Ocean sea lanes had similarities and differences. You didn't add any actual value. You didn't make an actual argument. So you need to provide more specificity in identifying, well, what exactly is similar or different in terms of the way in which exchanges took place on those two networks. There's a template for this if it's helpful. Something along the lines of both location A and location B were similar because, and then your similarity claims, whatever they are. However, one difference between location A and location B was difference A, whatever it is. So in this case, you're plugging in, obviously location A is the Silk Road, location B is Indian Ocean sea lanes. And so the value that you've added are these claims. What this similarity, and this difference. That's the key to scoring the thesis point. Some critical things to note about the comparative thesis template. First, a word that is critically important, and it's a good way to just start off a thesis, then making a comparison, is the word both, because it immediately forces you to make that comparison. The other thing to note is that you may just have one similarity and maybe two differences. You might just have one similarity and one difference. That's going to be okay. You can still score the thesis point even if you're not exactly following the rule of three, where you have two similarities and one difference. So now it's your turn. So you need to practice writing your thesis. So using this template, both location A and location B were similar because similarity A and similarity B. However, one difference between location A and location B was difference A. The next video, we'll go over how to add evidence and analysis to your body paragraphs. And then in the final video, we'll talk about contextualization and unicorn point and try and tie all these things together. As always, thanks for watching.